FBI load versus NYPD load versus LAPD load. So I thought it might be interesting to come out here and test three of the most well-known law enforcement agencies' rounds back to back to back to see how they compare to each other. So the FBI currently uses the Hornady Critical Duty. This is the 135 grain flex lock, and it's a 9mm plus P that is rated at 1070 feet per second. The NYPD uses the Spear Gold Dot, the traditional gold dot. That is a 124 grain plus P that is rated at 1220 feet per second. And the LAPD uses the G2 Gold Dot. That's a 147 grain. That's an elastomer filled bullet. That's rated at 1020 feet per second. So from the information I can gather, the NYPD has been using the Gold Dot since 2001. The FBI has been using their critical duty load since 2017, 2018, and the LAPD has been using their load since 2019. So it might be interesting to see how these all stack up against each other. And interestingly enough, all these law enforcement agencies use a 4-inch barreled 9mm pistol. The NYPD uses a Glock 19 Gen 5 currently. The FBI uses a Glock 19M, which is kind of a pre-Gen 5. And then the LAPD uses the FN 509 MRD LE. All of those have a 4-inch barrel. So I figured this pistol I have here will work to see what we get with that, because it's a 4-inch barrel Ruger Security 9, 4-inch barrel, just like all those law enforcement agencies. So it might be interesting to see how they will all compare to each other. In addition to a normal ballistic test, which I'm going to do, and by the way, my ballistic test consists of 4 layers of sweatshirt material, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, another 1/4 inch MDF at the back to represent hitting back ribs, and more clear ballistics. That's what I use for my normal real world simulation. We're going to do that test. Then also, in addition to that, I'm going to do that same test, but with the barrier in the way. And what I got here is something I've used before. A couple of sheets of 22 gauge steel. That kind of simulates our car door. So we'll do a regular ballistic test with the sweatshirt and the rib simulation on there, and then just put that up and repeat it with that, because a lot of these law enforcement agencies are actually picking the rounds that they're picking specifically to get better hard barrier penetration, not just, what's the best round for energy and all that, but they're also including that hard barriers might be a problem as well. So let's get started with this test. We're going to run these over the chronograph, and then we'll do our ballistic gel test. All right, so first up, we're going to run these over the chronograph. I got 5 rounds of critical duty 135 plus P in here, and followed by that is 5 rounds of Gold Dot 124 grain plus P, and then in my other magazine I have some G2 147 grain. So let's see what kind of velocity we get with these. The FBI load here is 135 grain plus P, rated at 1070 feet per second. So let's see how close I get to 1070 in a 4-inch barrel here. 1043, 1026, 1028, 1042, 1034. So we did not get that rated velocity. And the last 5 rounds here are Spear Gold Dot 124 grain plus P. These are rated at 1220 feet per second. Let's see how close we get to 1220 feet per second with our Gold Dot. 1188, 1203, 1174, 1193, 1206. So we didn't quite get that velocity. It's more powerful, but we just didn't quite get it. Now we have our Gold Dot G2, and I believe all these ratings are through 4-inch barrels too. So that's a 147 grain. This is rated at 1020 feet per second. So let's see if we get 1020 with our G2. 946, 978, 952, 951. No read on that one. So You know, they're all below rated velocity. I would say the lowest recoil out of all of these would be the FBI load. Felt like almost no recoil. The Gold Dot had a little bit more recoil, and the G2 was again a little bit more like the FBI load for recoil, just a tad more muzzle jump because it is a little bit heavier bullet. So I'd say the FBI load and the LAPD load, not a lot of recoil. The NYPD load, a little bit of recoil. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these all compare. All right, we're going to do our standard real world simulation test. So I got 4 layers of sweatshirt material followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, then another 1/4 inch MDF at the back to represent hitting back ribs. You got to remember this is a half representation of the density of flesh because it is gel. So if we were going to get, let's say, 16 inches in there, that would actually indicate getting like 8 inches in a real living target. So ideally we want to keep these bullets in that first gel block without going through that back rib simulation. So in order, we're going to do our FBI load, then our NYPD load, then our LAPD load. So FBI load, let's see what this does. And I got a malfunction, and that shot's kind of low. Let me do it one more time with the FBI load. All right, one more time with our FBI load, a little bit higher so that bullet doesn't go out of the block. All right, now we'll hit that with our NYPD load. That one's a lot louder. Now, here's our LAPD load. So take a look. All right, so all of those went to about the same depth in there. Our FBI load expanded both times. A lot of damage in there. That second shot, or that first shot I should say, with the G2 actually blocks the view of the other FBI load, but the channel looks the same as that bottom one there. So we'll just start with our second FBI load. It hit the rib simulation on the back and stopped. There's a couple dents there. There's a dent down here too. So all 3 of them hit the rib simulation and stopped. So it's actually kind of perfect penetration for a duty load. So our FBI load hit that and stopped. We got some okay expansion. Our Gold Dot, a little bit better expansion, and it hit that rib simulation. And then our G2, no expansion, or at least not really any good expansion from what I can tell. So again, our FBI load went to 19 inches. Our Gold Dot went to 19 inches. And our Gold Dot G2 went to 19 inches. So all 3 of these duty loads, same penetration, similar damage with all of them. But at least from this test, that LAPD load just doesn't look that good to me. The other 2 look a little bit better. And you know, our standard Gold Dot, I would say it put a little more damage in there because it's moving a little bit faster, but the FBI load isn't that bad. So let's set everything back up, and then we'll go through our hard barrier and see how these do with a hard barrier in the way. All right, our hard barrier test. So I have 2 layers of 22 gauge steel to kind of simulate a couple different layers of car door or whatever. It's not a perfect science there, but it's a hard barrier nonetheless, and it did pretty well at simulating like a windshield or a hard barrier in my previous test with it. Like it flattened the bullet exactly the same way it would if it hit a windshield. So we're going to do our FBI load again, then our standard Gold Dot, and then our G2. And I do have to get relatively close on this. People ask, why do you do that? Well, it's so that I can actually make the shot. And if I backed up to like 5 more feet, you know, the velocity difference would be pretty insignificant. It's better to get close and actually hit the target. So FBI load, hard barrier test. See how this does. All right, did I hit it? Yep. All right, go above that with our standard gold dot. A lot louder, a lot more recoil. Oh, we caught that. All right. So I'm gonna try to go right here in the middle. And hopefully this will catch the LAPD load. Let's go take a look. All right, so interesting performance here. It just looks like that G2 just didn't have a whole lot of juice behind it. Our FBI load, pretty good. Our gold dot, I would say our gold dot's a little better. Just when I see it, yeah, our gold dot actually almost punched through that back rib simulation. So, you know, that extra power does make a difference. The extra power of that plus P and that gold dot makes a little bit of a difference. So look at the FBI load and look at all these. The gold dot and the FBI load actually have about the same energy dump in this first 3-inch piece after going through this hard barrier, which is pretty good. The LAPD load in the middle there, it's a little bit less substantial. Everything looks like it went through straight, so nothing strange there with that. So with our FBI load, again, we hit 19 inches. It bounced off that rib simulation. So it's very consistent. Our gold dot, little bit more damage in there. Not a lot, but a little bit. And that went a little bit deeper. That again went to about the same depth, but I'm going to call it about 20 inches because it punched through that rib simulation. So just a little bit more penetration with our gold dot. Now with our G2, what's interesting about this is that actually it has a larger diameter, at least it looks like it to me, after going through the hard barrier than what it did going, you know, through the regular, just plain shot. So, you know, I don't know why that is, but I would say honestly, looking at all these, our G2 isn't that good, to be honest here. And I know I have a lot of officers that actually watch my videos. So if you're with the LAPD or if this is your load, I'm sorry. It just doesn't look that good to me in the plain shot or through the hard barrier test. As we're with the FBI load and with the original gold dot, they both are doing pretty well. Now, one thing I will mention here is if you're comparing that NYPD load gold dot to the FBI load, that NYPD load has a lot more recoil. And yet it's not doing a whole lot more than what the FBI load is doing, except for there is just a little more damage in there overall. So I would say it's a little more effective, and it's very proven because there's been a lot of shootings with it. So if I had to pick out of all these three, I would pick the original gold dot. The second in line I would say would be the FBI load. Not bad for what it is, pretty consistent in all the barrel lengths I've tested it on. And our G2, I'm not really seeing where that's that good, so interesting. So let's pull these all out of the block. I'm gonna take a close-up look at all these bullets. Then I'm gonna shoot our steel target from 14 yards and see if there's a big difference in the recoil where it's gonna throw me off with my accuracy. So let's do all that. All right, so here's a close-up look at our bullets going through our standard ballistic test with just our 4 layers of sweatshirt and our rib simulation there. So here's our gold dot. Here's our critical duty, the second one. The first one I discarded because it looks basically identical to this. And then here's our G2. So our NYPD load, our FBI load, and our LAPD load. So our FBI load here compared to our gold dot. Gold dot definitely a little bit bigger. I would prefer a larger expansion myself, so I would say it did a little bit better in this test. And then obviously our LAPD load here, let's compare it to the FBI load, just didn't do good at all. Now when we go through our hard barrier, actually things look a little bit more comparable to each other. So here's our FBI load, here is our gold dot, and then here is our G2 round here. So interesting there. Do this test. I'm going to say our critical duty right here with the plug in it, you can tell, versus our gold dot, very similar. I would say very similar size. Maybe the gold dot's a little bit bigger, but you know, they did about the same thing, except the extra power of that gold dot pushed it a little bit deeper. And we look at our G2, we'll compare that to our critical duty. About the same as the other two, to be honest here. So when it comes to hard barrier penetration, I think that, you know, they were right to make them all like this, because at least our gold dots, I believe, are both bonded, and our critical duty is banded and has a little bit harder lead core. So when we're talking about our hard barrier tests, you know, they're all pretty similar, but you can't, you know, discount this, because most of the time the shootings are not going to be through a hard barrier. So when we look at that, you know, we're going to have some advantages here with our gold dot and our critical duty, but I'm going to say our gold dot's just a little bit better in my opinion. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target. So I just want to pop these shots off as fast as I think I can hit the target, see if there's a big difference in the practical shootability. So I'm going to do 8 rounds of each different round and see if there's a big difference in my ability to place some accurate, fast shots. So first up, we have our FBI load, the critical duty. See how this does from 14 yards. All right, so that's pretty shootable. Now the other 8 in here are our old school NYPD load gold dot. You know, I missed one, but honestly, when you're shooting fast like that, I'm not seeing a big difference, because there's slightly less muzzle flip actually with the gold dot than the critical duty, because it's a lighter bullet. There's just a little bit more fast snapping recoil. So not a big difference there. Now we have our LAPD load. Let's see how this does. So I would say probably our LAPD load is the most shootable load. It's easiest to shoot rapidly. But again, I think it would be the weakest load. I didn't do the numbers yet, but I think it would be the weakest load. So that makes sense why it's the easiest to shoot. So looking at this, it's easy to sum this all up. I would say our gold dot is #1 for actual terminal performance with or without a barrier. Our FBI load is a close #2, very close. It just doesn't quite get the same size as the gold dot, especially if there's not a hard barrier in there in the way. So it's not going to be, you know, the FBI load's not going to be quite as effective as the NYPD load. And looking at the LAPD load, I don't think that's a good load at all. I'm not really seeing where that's doing anything that we want to see, at least out of a 4-inch barrel. So I'm going to say our old school gold dot's pretty good. And our FBI load, it's okay. So interesting test. That's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like. Thanks for watching.